Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Ronnie Jankovich. Coach Jankovich is the head strength and conditioning coach along with Tightends Coach at the Roswell High School. He is in his 13th year coaching in the high school setting. He has an undergrad and masters both from Bethel University and McKenzie, Tennessee. While at Bethel, he spent 5 years as strength coach, along with being a grad assistant, student assistant, and offensive coordinator. He is currently on the state advisory board in Georgia for the NHSSCA. He is originally from Indiana and moved to Georgia in 2016. He's married to Colleen, and they have 2 boys, Westin and Brady. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on, and been excited to do this one. This is going to be a good time.
I hope so. Texting back and forth, I've really been looking forward to it. So hopefully we have a little fun, talk strength and conditioning, and whatever else comes up.
Yeah, man. It's should be good. Hopefully, we give some little nuggets to some people listening and help some people out. So,
well, I doubt it'll be me giving the nuggets, but hopefully I ask the right questions that you can.
I'll be all good. It's all good.
So I kind of look back, I listened to a podcast and tried to kind of read up where I could. You kind of had an offbeat path to Roswell.
Yeah. How
did you kind of end up there?
The grace of God. I mean, it was completely by accident, man. I was a head football coach in Indiana for a couple of years in the high school setting, and I hated every second of it. It was the worst job I probably had, and I roofed a couple of years of my life, and I didn't enjoy being a head coach. I just didn't. It was a lot. Being the head strength coach, I was an offense coordinator, head coach, special teams coordinator, did the laundry, did the equipment, did all the fundraising, and it was breaking me, and my wife was like, hey, take a trip, go visit your guys down in Georgia and enjoy a whole week away. So packed my bags, came down here to hang out with a couple of buddies, and one thing led to another, man. I ended up at Lassiter High School. My former college offense coordinator when I was a player was there as the running backs coach. So I went in there, started shooting the bull with the head coach. He's like, hey, man, you want a job? I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, man. He's like, everyone speaks highly of you. Let's do it. And so I called my wife. I said, hey, let's move to Georgia. She was on board, and that's how it all fell into place. It was completely by accident, man. I was just going to check out to see what Georgia was about, what happened what was going on down here. And it just fell into my lap, man. Like I said, very blessed for that opportunity.
You can't beat opportunities like that. You weren't looking for it. You were just trying to go and relax, and then it changed the whole trajectory of your life.
Yeah, it did. And those guys, my offense coordinator, my head coach at Bethel, I was a student assistant when I finished playing. And then our head coach is our strength coach. It's an NEI school, not a ton of money in that stuff. So he was like, you love the weight room, it's yours. Take it over. And I was like, what? I'm 22 years old, just freshly graduated. And he's like, it's yours. Take it. So I had 150 athletes, travel guys, not untraveled guys, the program out for. And I was like, I had no idea what I'm doing. We had our weight room at Bethel at the time was an old closet. We had 3 squat racks, 3 benches, 2 inclines, and some dumbbells that were falling apart. And that's what I had to deal with. I had 150 athletes to get through before practice and meetings and film and everything else. So that's where I kind of get started, man. I had no background in the strength conditioning world. I was a health PE undergrad, and I got my master's in education, and I had no idea what I was going to do besides teach and coach. I didn't know it would be in the weight room, and that kind of got me started in it. And that first taste, man, it was just, I was hooked. Just that opportunity to get in there, start seeing things and how the changes can be made and so quickly. And I was hooked instantly, man. So I started making phone calls and emails, and I was looking up every article and book I could read. And that's basically my background, man. Like I'm not classically trained. I'm not a I always joke around and, like coaches like Dan Mullins and, Coach Windler and all those, great coaches, man. And those guys all have a background in, and they're extremely intelligent. And that's what they were knew they were going to do from the start, and I'm more of like, okay, those guys are all classically trained chefs and they know what to do. Like I got a hot dog, water, and jelly beans, make a 5-star course out of it. And it's been interesting, but it's also made me learn a ton. I feel like I can adapt to any situation. I've been in a lot of different situations, and I think that's helped me, as the years went on.
You've done amazing with it. I mean, you've ended up at Roswell, and that's just one of the top schools in Georgia to be coaching at, but not to leave that too quickly. So when you walk in the weight room at Bethel, like you said, you're 22 years old. These kids are just dang near your peers. Yeah. You're probably just graduated. Some of them are just coming in. Some of them are getting ready to graduate. So you guys are all, you could run into them at a party. I mean, you're all essentially the same. Where do you start, and how do you get those kids to buy into what you're saying?
I think we had the right culture, and again, I didn't know what I was doing. I made so many mistakes. Looking back at what I did, it was just, I should have been fired pretty quickly. But, I wanted to structure it to make sure it was as smooth as I possibly could make it. With my background being education, I knew classroom management, right? My classroom was just a weight room. I needed to see my resources. I needed to, what I needed and what I had, and then the people around me to make it work right. And that's basically where I started. Just classroom management. How do you manage your classroom? That's how I'm going to run the weight room. And it was hard. It was very hard because a lot of those guys were my roommates, right? A lot of those guys were late Friday night, late Saturday nights in the off season, and go fishing with. And then I had to command a whole room full of them. And that was very difficult. But I had a lot of good people, around me that supported me, and the culture was there. So I just had to kind of get in and keep it rolling, and trying to make it as streamlined and smooth as possible with me taking over that room. And I did all right. It was interesting.
I guess that's one way to learn. I can't say that some of the stuff we do out here is much different. You try to implement some stuff and it works or it doesn't work, and then you go from there. Now you've worked at every level of school. So you've worked at college, you've worked at really wealthy public schools, and you've worked at really poor public schools.
Yeah.
How does your training style adapt to having resources and then just having to make something work?
Oh, I can tell you this, it's a lot more fun when you got stuff. But I tell you what, when you don't, you become a really good coach. When you find a way. I think, I wasn't raised with a whole bunch of money. Parents are both hardworking, blue collar people. You found a way. And I think that's just, I grew up in the Midwest, and that's just, that's who we are. You just find a way, man. Grandparents immigrate, you just find a way. And when you're at those places that don't have much, you find a way. You got to find what your kids need. And most of the time it's not weight training. It's not strength conditioning. It's not speed work. It's not change of direction. It's not recovery. It's just being there. Just being there, being consistent for a lot of those people. They don't have a ton. And when you're consistent and you love on them and you take care of them and you show that you care about them, they'll run through walls for you. And when you're at other places where you have everything, you may maybe not have that same style of coaching. Whereas now you can really get into programming, you can start explaining things to them and why we do things, and really diving deeper into it. And then really looking at the athlete as an athlete, and not just what do they need from the hierarchy of, food, clothes, water, those types of things. You start diving in more deeper. Okay, now we got BBT. Now we got dasher timers. Now we got jump mats. That's when it's both of them are great. But again, if you had all those tools and you get to really dive deep into the strength conditioning world, that's when it's fun. Not that it's not rewarding and fun at the other place. It's just, you're needed in other areas in life rather than strength conditioning. So my programming changes because maybe I'm not as strict on those, or I know they're not eating and doing what they should be doing, not because they don't have it or they don't have the knowledge to do it. They just don't have it. So now you got, okay, I need to make sure you're eating today before we go train. Like, that's more important than getting a full hour in the weight room. Maybe we get 20 minutes because we're making PB&Js and getting crackers and stuff like that. And then you got to look, again, you have to look at your resources. What do your kids need the most? Most of those places just, they need the bare minimum. You need to learn how to move. And once you're doing that, then you see more buy-in, you see more kids showing up, you give them more rewards. Like, we had a stockpile full of Gatorade. And every time they would come in, I get them a Gatorade. And those kids, they're just coming back to get the Gatorade, but they have to put the work in first. So you're teaching them that accountability and those types of things. Whereas the other places, like, it's the standard, that's the culture, that's the environment you're in. We expect it, right? And the other place, you're trying to get to that point, right? And that's kind of the main difference is when you're programming for those types of places, at least in my experiences, right?
Taking that into where I think maybe most of the country is the room split. It's not really a rich school, but it's not a poor school. You have rich kids, you have poor kids. How do you make yourself, I guess, walk the line where you're able to do both sides? You're able to be a mentor to this kid that he needs that more than strength and conditioning, but this kid over here has everything he kind of needs in that area, and now you need to get him bigger, stronger, faster. How do you mesh that together? And I know that's probably a very tough answer, but
I think it's knowing the kids and getting like deeper into what their life's about. Yeah, you can't just show up to the room and run the room. You have to know each individual. You can't blanket everybody into that idea of that everyone's okay and everyone's not. Because even at the poorer school, we still had some of those kids that were extremely rich. But again, the standard was showing up, right? Or it was just doing the bare minimums. And that's how you have to start changing that culture. But again, you have to know your people. You have to know their background. You got to ask the coaches prior, what's your relationship with this kid? What's his home life like? It's like college recruiting all over again, because now you're trying to figure those things out. Hey, little Johnny, shows up in the same shorts every single day. What's his home life? Like, reach out to counselors. And I dive a lot deeper into that stuff, especially taking a job at Roswell. Coach Brett Bartholomew, his book, Unconscious Coaching, or Conscious Coaching. I don't know if you haven't read that yet. That's the first book I tell everybody. And I'm not like, I read. It doesn't look like it. Doesn't sound like it. I do read. That book changed everything for me, because going into a place like Roswell, when you have both, you have extremely talented athletes. You got 4 or 5-star kids. You got kids that will never play Friday night. Like, how do you mix all that together? In that book, I'm telling you, it was a game changer for me, because I was able to take those kids, talking to our coaches, talking to our counselors, talking to teachers, talking to ADs. Hey, what is this kid like? Well, he's this, this, and this, and this, and that. I'm like, okay. I watch him in a week in the weight room. He falls into this category. What does Brett say the best coaching style is? And I kid you not, man, I did exactly that. And it was the buy-in and the relationships I built at Roswell have never been faster done in a year than I have, because I fully attest to that book, right? And learning how to work with people from a lot of different backgrounds, And again, I haven't got to talk with Brett ever. Hopefully one day I will, just to thank him for that, because I think it's a phenomenal book, and it starts to really dive deep into our athletes' mind and who they are and how we can relate to them a little bit better than we have been in the past. Does that answer that? Is that good enough?
That was really a great answer. So I've seen the book on Twitter. I hadn't got it yet, but now that you start talking about it, I usually, if a guest really recommends a book, it doesn't take very long before that book's in my house. So that'll be the next one on the list. You were talking about not sounding like you read or whatever, I think meatheads get labeled as meatheads, but they're some of the most well-read people I have ever met. You start talking to them, there's a lot of studying that goes along with strength and conditioning that people just take for granted that doesn't happen. But math and reading is a lot of time spent there.
Schoolwork has never come easy to me, man. It's always like sports. I could roll out of bed and you can throw a new sport at me and I could play it pretty quickly and be pretty dang good at it. Mine is soccer, because soccer is an unbelievably hard sport for me. It still blows my mind how those people do that sport. I don't get it. It's unbelievable. But learning and those types of things in school is always hard. So I know what I have to do to just be on playing level as everyone else. So yeah, I read a ton, at least attempt to. And this is my notebook. I write down all my notes from every single page I read, because that's just how I learn. I got to read a page, write down the interesting points, go to the next. It takes me forever, but I'm retaining it better that way, if that makes sense. So yeah, I read a ton and try to take as many books as I possibly can from my my circle of people that I trust, and read those right away. And I think you'll find Brett's books. It is very good. You won't be able to put it down. It goes pretty quick, man. It's a good read.
Now, you were talking earlier about when you were at Bethel and kind of moving through, and then, conscious coaching. You were talking about that a little bit, but owning up to your mistakes, learning from your mistakes, and improving. How has that affected your career and where you are now?
I think you have to go back and look at what you've done and how you can improve. I think it's been said before, but I think the best of the best always feel like they're not doing enough and they're not learning enough. And, I think the day you feel like you've done it or you've reached the top or you've accomplished something, that's when you start to lose. So we had a very successful year last year, and, my job was to go out and learn as much as I possibly can to try to make it even better. We were one game short in football, successful in other sports here, but what can I do for our football program to take it to the next step? Was it something I did that hurt us, or didn't help us the way it needed? Was it a mental thing? Was it a physical thing? Was it a speed thing? And you can go back and you look and you watch film and you take data and you collect it. Over the years, man, my program's changed. 13 years in high school. It's my 14th year, I think, coming up. And, you look at year 1 to year 13, 14, it's like kindergarten to your master's program, like that, and you got to go back and you got to learn and you got to read and you got to reach out to people. I have a great group of men and women here in Georgia that I rely heavy on, and it's been a blessing. And this NHSSCA family and the group that I have here in Georgia is pretty amazing, and they really help me out a lot. And they don't make fun of me for asking questions or suggesting stupid things, or because I think that's how you learn, man. You got to ask questions. You got to ask smarter people. And my whole process is I never want to be the smartest guy in the room. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, there's a problem, and I'm in the wrong room. And I feel that way with a lot of our people here. And I'm very, very lucky, very blessed.
Talking about that, I looked into the staff that's there at Roswell for football, and they all had a bio on the webpage. And man, that is an incredible staff that's been built down there to coach football. Yeah. Having those kind of minds and those kind of experiences all in one place, how does that mesh, and how are you guys able to kind of feed off each other and keep building?
And they all know so much of the football and just the football aspect of things, but they are so good with our kids and just knowing them and knowing what they need. It's been one of the cooler experiences as a coach, is because they are so knowledgeable. We have so many guys that played at the next level, that played Division I football, that played in the NFL or had experiences overseas. And it's just me and like, hey, what you guys do in this situation? Like, okay, we did this, this, and this. Okay, what did your strength coach do when you guys did this? That's this. Our O-line coach is amazing. He trains the guys privately. And a lot of our offensive linemen go to him on the weekends and stuff like that. They do a lot of different stuff and they kind of fill buckets for me that we're not able to fill in during class. I have 65, 70 kids in the weight room at, one point in time. It's me and the head coach, and head coach is in and out. He's got meetings. He's got recruiting things to deal with. And we all know how that goes. He's not, he wants to be there, but sometimes you just can't, right? As a head football coach. So I'm able to rely on those guys a little bit. Like, hey, these guys missed this today. Okay. During drills, they're going to do this, this, and this. Right. So it's been really neat, man. It kind of, again, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm okay with that, but I'm learning every day. And it's been cool, man. I've been in situations where it's not always that open, where the defensive guys are defensive guys, offense guys are offensive guys, and we don't speak, you don't talk, you don't look at each other. And, they're in their own world, we're in our own world. And this group is pretty darn tight and, very complimenting of what we're doing here. And it's been neat, man. It's a different type of staff when you got that kind of experience, and you're okay with asking those questions. And those guys aren't afraid of giving you the truth, right? Because it's not about feelings, man. It's about getting stuff right and making sure it's best for our athletes.
Looking back over your career, I can't imagine that every sport coach you had to deal with is like what you have now. And a sport coach has a lot to do with how your job's ran and what you're trying to do and what he's doing with athletes, or she, if they're trying to mesh your system or if they just don't care about your system. So in your past, how has that been before Roswell? Have you had some adversity you had to overcome with some strength coaches or some sport coaches?
Yeah, I would say it's the biggest thing is communicating. We are not, I am not, my wife will attest to this, I am not a great communicator, right? So, her and I, we've been together, this will be our 14th year together, married, together 16 years or so. So one thing that we talked about early on is communication, and I'm not very good at it, right? So you can tell, how those conversations went early on in our career together. And that's something I've kind of taken, from her. Is she is she's a fourth grade school teacher. She's an amazing communicator. And I've kind of adopted that from her, is in our relationship, being a good communicator. How can our relationship's great because of that? How can I take that now and use it in my job, right? So one of the things before I take jobs is I like to ask the AD if I can have a meeting with all our coaches. I want assistant coaches, head coaches especially, they have to be in the meeting. Or we need to set up a meeting one-on-one and let them ask questions. Let them, hey, we want this. I don't want my kids benching. I don't want my kids cleaning. I don't want them doing this. And that's fine. Okay. I think a lot of coaches get stuck and pigeonholed in one thing. We are all going to back squat. And I say we're going to back squat, and that's all we're going to do is back squat. And you turn a lot of people off by that, right? Do you know if my left tackle is strong because he benches 315 pounds on the barbell? Or do you know he benches 125-pound dumbbells for reps? Does anyone know that? No, he's just strong, right? It doesn't matter. I don't care how we get strong. We're just going to get strong. So if you don't want your kids to clean, fine. We're going to do these 3 exercises instead. You don't want them to back squat, fine. We're going to do these 3 or 4 exercises. Who cares at the end of the day? And that's my pitch to our people is it doesn't matter, right? You don't want our baseball kids to bench. Can they dumbbell bench? Absolutely. Okay, well, there we go. No dumbbell bench. Pretty easy, right? And a lot of that conversation has opened up doors for me to have relationships with those coaches. And early on in my career, I would have said, we're going to bench and that's it, right? And I think I've definitely matured in that aspect of things. And again, everyone wants to feel like they're in power, they have the say, or, you got to give it to them a little bit, like, I don't want my kids to clean. That's fine. We won't clean. We're going to do this, this, and this instead to create that power production. They love it, right? Or I want every single kid to incline bench. All right. Every one of your athletes will incline bench. And when you give that power back to them and some say in our programs, it really starts to build that connection. And again, it starts with communicating and giving them their voice and make sure they are heard in what we are doing. Right. And then say we butt heads on something, like we train on game day, and it's not like we're not maxing out, we're not doing anything crazy. Like, well, we want to do lightweight and a lot of reps. And it's like, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from. This is the science behind it, why we don't want that. And then most of the time when you can do things like that, you can show them what you know, you're going to get that buy-in more from them, right? It's not an instant no. It's not making them feel bad about it. It's, again, communicating the proper way and just we're all being heard, right? We're all part of this together. It ain't about me. It's about all of us together, working together for what's best for our athletes. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Some coaches just don't care. I'm not going to name names. I've had a coach tell me that the last school that they were at, that football coach was a strength coach, and all he cared about was football. So we were going to go do CrossFit with my buddy. And I'm like, hey, man, that's on you. I already gave you all my information. I told you, gave you a chance to come talk to me. I'm fine with it. That's fine. Not a big deal. That's good. So I don't work with that sport. And I'm going to work with people that want to work with me and that want to be there. And if little Johnny or little Susie wants to come to the weight room, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure they are getting my best and making them into their best person they can be. And I don't hold grudges. Little Johnny's a sport player from this coach's sport, and he wants to come train with me. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure he is healthy and okay to participate. And sometimes it's very, very hard. And you don't always get that AD that's going to come down on that person. Some of them don't like confrontation. That's fine. And you got to kind of be a chameleon, man. You got to be able to smooch. You got to be able to kiss babies and be a politician a little bit and make them feel like they're extremely important people, and then do your thing. And once you have the buy-in from the kids, you can kind of reverse that role a little bit. Like, it's not always the coaches. Sometimes it's the kids. Like, sometimes our girls lacrosse team loves training. Well, guess who loves them training now? Our girls lacrosse coach. Right? And it's not that they weren't on board before, because they were, but now even more so. Now you're starting to see that buy-in and that trust factor coming into play. So sometimes you got to reverse engineer those things. Sometimes you got to get that, that cheerleader, the first cheerleader hooked in the weight room to get the other ones to get the coach involved, right? And that's kind of been my approach. And then, again, communicating. AD, who's the people who are going to be the biggest fighters, the biggest buckers of the system? I need to know. Well, it's going to be our cross-country coach. Wham. I'm going to pull up 6 articles on why cross-country athletes need to weight train. I'm going to print them off. I'm going to give them a summary and say, hey, coach, I got these 6 articles. I just want you to read through them. And let's have a conversation. Don't just tell me no, just give me a chance. And sometimes that works great. And other times they take it and throw it away and they don't care. But you got to be able to give those people the information and have that conversation with them. And if you could just talk to people and get on their level and see what they want and what they know or think they know, and then try to tweak it a little bit in favor of bringing them to where you need to be. So it's a lot of mind games too, man. It's like playing Survivor at all times. And it's it's fun. That part's fun too, man. It's all fun. I have a great job. I tell people all the time, I couldn't imagine doing anything else anymore. It is fun. It's fun, and you get to meet a lot of different people and learn a ton from people from all over the country. So it's a great job, man. And I think that's part of it. It's a big part of it.
You have to enjoy what you do to make it worth waking up every morning. And then you throw the long hours on top of that. And then you got administration you're dealing with. You got students you're dealing with. It can get really hectic and unenjoyable if this isn't your passion.
Yeah. I mean, that's anything. And, I've been very blessed, man. Since coming to Georgia, it's been pretty awesome. Been working with some really good people, and sometimes not so much. And you learn from the bad things too. Like someone said it the other day, and I think it was on Twitter. You learn more from bad than you do from good, or you got to take one thing from the bad so you don't do it. Right? Like we all had bad coaches in our life. We all had good coaches in our life. We'll take something that the bad coach did really, really bad and make it good. Right. So I kind of, you got to take the good and the bad and make it your own thing. And then I've done all right with that, I think.
I think so. From different things I've heard, going back to your girls lacrosse team, I would imagine it's easier to get coaches buy-in when they're playing for state titles and winning state titles. That always helps.
That helps. Winning's fun, man. Winning's fun. I don't know if other people know that or not, but it's fun when you win, dude. It's fun. I've been on both sides of things. It's a lot more fun when you win.
And it seems like you have a lot less people wondering what's going on.
Yeah. And that's nice too. My weight room's not connected to the school. I'm down by myself. I'm in our field house, and I came out for the first time like for our staff photo, and somebody was like, "You work here?" I'm like, "No, just here to take a picture and get free breakfast and just go back to my hole." And I'm fine with that. I'm good with that.
Hey, the less people you have to worry about, the more you can concentrate on the kids.
Right.
Now, talking to you and getting ready for all of this, we didn't delve into any specifics. So I know you've told me a few times that you're a non-traditional programming and have kind of a non-traditional thought pattern on strength and conditioning. I haven't really nailed you down on what you mean by that, but this is probably the time to start getting you backed into a corner a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You explain that a little bit.
I just feel like, man, as a high school strength coach, you wear many hats, but you also got to be well versed in, what is it? A jack of all trades, a master of none. But I think that it finishes like it's better to be it's better to have that than not, right? And just be one master of one. I think high school strength coaches get painted into a corner. I'm a strength coach. Okay. Well, there's speed, there's plyometrics, there's recovery, there's RPR and functional movement screening, and there's a million things that go into this. There's velocity-based training, there's GPS now, there's dasher systems, there's just jump mats, there's plyo mats, there's all the force plates. There's so many different things out there. You can't paint yourself into a corner, and I think maybe if you're at a school and your kids only need strength, which we've all been in, I don't know if we've all been there, but I've been there, where you walk into a room, it's like, okay, I can sit here and teach these kids how to stretch and move, but they can barely lift the bar. What's the point of teaching them, functional movement screens when we need them to get stronger, right? Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job, right? We got to be able to run, jump, and lift, and we got to put, 10, 15 pounds this offseason on a kid that's 115 pounds playing those for us. Like, you're in trouble, brother. All right. So I think over the years, especially the places I've been, I'm at a place now where I have a lot of good athletes. And my focus was, how can I take a very good program and make it great? And how do you do that? Well, I think you have to start diving in deeper than just because they're strong. They're fast. We know this. They're extremely talented. They've been first round, second round. This past year, we're Final Four in football. Okay. We've been Elite Eight, Final Four for girls lacrosse, state championship runner-up this year. Like, how do you make that transition? And it can't always be just get stronger. That can't be the answer, right? So then you start diving into Chris Corfist and his big toe movement stuff. And I don't know if Dan told you, but they always make fun of me for this. But I think it's so interesting when you start looking into range of motion in your toe, your ankle, and your knees, like how it translates. And it all starts from the big toe, right? So you start diving in that. Okay, well, we know if we get mobility in our big toe, we can produce up to 30% more power output just by having good mobility in your big toe. It's like, okay, can I do that? Okay, let's try it. What's it going to hurt? Okay, you guys are going to come in. We're going to do these exercises to help mobility in our toe. And kids look at you like you're crazy. Then you explain it to them. And then you start doing it and you see your sprint time start to drop. You start seeing our vertical start going up. You see we're adding 15, 20 pounds on our kids, but they're all running faster. They're all jumping higher. It's like, okay, that's one part of it maybe, right? Then you start looking at all these different things. And I feel like you can't pigeonhole yourself. You can't just be, I'm a huge 5-3-1 guy. Not having a background in weight training, I love it. I don't know if there's a better program out there. You know, I've read a lot, I've done a lot, and tried a lot of different things myself. And with our athletes, I don't know if there's a better program than 5-3-1. So how can I make the 5-3-1 better? Okay, can you start adding in bands, adding in chains? Can you do these types of things? So I've always kind of taken a different outlook on things. I don't always want to be what everybody else does. And I had a coach once say, okay, everyone's doing feed the cats now. What are the guys that were doing feed the cats 20 years ago doing now? And that's like where my mind is most of the time. It's like, I'm not always chasing the new thing, but I want to find out what everybody else is looking into, because maybe that's going to be the game changer. You know, VBT's been around a long time. We just now starting to hear more and more about it, right? It's been more prominent these days. Well, you've already missed the boat, right? If you've been doing VBT for 20, 15 years, you're way ahead of us. You're no longer looking at VBT. You're already on something else. What is that? You know, and that's where my mind is when I'm programming, is I always want to not find the next thing because I know what works. Old school works, right? And I always tell people, I'm not old school. I'm not new school. I'm in school, constantly learning. So what is the next thing? What is the next big thing? And I'm never going to stop doing that. I'm not going to scratch my program because it works, right? The Windler 5-3-1 works, period. Now I've added my own flares and stuff to it, and I've added clean programs differently than what Windler would do and other people do, but it works. We're going to continue to do it, but I'm going to sprinkle in other things I think is going to make a difference, right? And that's where my program has really changed. I really started to focus more on that stuff. What I can do, what are small things I can do, or in between our sets, or before we get going, or after we get done, to increase production, right? And I think that it all started with that big toe stuff. I'm telling you, start diving into that, you can go forever down rabbit holes and never get out of them. Eventually you got to stop because you can't get so focused on one thing. And I think some people just can't get out of that, right? There's so many different things you can be doing. And that's where I'm always, I would say it's different just from that aspect of things. I don't want to continue to do the same thing because we've always done it that way, right? You're always trying to find the next thing, or what I can do to make sure that our athletes are producing, are healthy, and the product on the field is good, right? At the end of the day, as much as we don't want to say it, high school is a new college. College is a new pro. Pro is a new Pro Bowl. I can't do anything. And, it's just how it is now, man. It's just, we always got to be thinking ahead. And if you're not, you're behind, and you're behind, you adapt or you die. And that's kind of how I've taken my programming philosophy. I guess it's just, you got to be willing to buck the system, and at the same time not rattle too much. That makes sense. Clear as mud.
Yeah, clear as mud. No, I took 3 different things away from that conversation. Questions, maybe something we can build into there. Talking about the big toe stuff, we'll start there. I'm a Nebraska fan. I remember it's been a few years back now when they had Taylor Martinez. Before Adrian Martinez, there was Taylor Martinez, and he had turf toe issues. Listening to those guys talk, what they would do is they put him in a pool, and they had him like move quarters and marbles around the bottom of a pool, pick them up with his toes, limber that up. Well, he come back from turf toe faster than he was, and he wasn't running. He was just getting his toes better to stretch that out to get him on the field faster. So there's definitely something to toe movement.
Yeah. It's weird, man. I always get people like, you're a foot guy. I'm like, man, like I want to learn, and I think it's really interesting. And listen, we take 5 minutes every day and we do some mobility stuff, whether it's ankle, whether it's toe, hip, T-spine. Like, we're always doing something to help mobility. And if we can, and we all know my mobility is better in my hip, I can produce more power. I can get a better lay drive. I can put more force into the floor, which means I can run faster and jump higher. Like that's all stuff that I've learned. So why not do it? You know, like you can't just keep squatting and say this is it. We're just going to keep squatting. Okay. Because eventually you don't. Right. So again, what are we doing to help our athletes become better athletes? Right. They don't need to squat. Again, everyone talks about it until they put a barbell at the 50-yard line or at midcourt or center field. It doesn't matter. Stuff doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's awesome. It looks great. You get likes. People think you're a really good coach because the kid squats 600 pounds, or the kid just might be a genetic freak and is super slow, right? Or maybe he squats 600 pounds and he's super fast, just because, despite, it doesn't matter what you do, he was going to do it anyway, right? So, or she was going to do it anyway. Just don't overthink it, man. Just what are we doing to make our athletes better? And it started with that big toe thing, man. It's just, I find it very interesting. Pressure is going to bust pipes. So if your toe's bad, your ankle's bad, it's going to come through the knee. Okay, and that's, again, more and more studies that I'm doing right now on my own to hopefully put out there in the next couple of years when I gather all my data. But, you know, you look at the kids that have been injured, okay, and you go back and you look at their mobility, there's issues. Okay, so fix the mobility issues, do the injuries go away? And knock on wood, you know, we're starting to see that. You know, there's always freak accidents you cannot prevent. You can only, I don't know if you can even, I don't know. You can reduce, maybe. If there's a 1% chance I'm going to help a kid not be injured, it's worth it, right? And like that's what I tell our athletes all the time. Yeah, it's silly, it's weird, it's different. No one else is doing it. You haven't seen, the older coaches didn't do it. These guys haven't done it. We didn't do it in middle school. But you're doing it now. And if it helps 1%, it's worth it, right? And that's kind of like my pitch to our kids right now. And it's a different way of thinking. You know, we might be in the weight room 30 minutes. You know, 10 of it might be mobility. And maybe some people look at that differently, but that's important to us. And we're going to keep hounding it until it's where we want it, right?
And the athletes we're dealing with today aren't the same athletes that there was 20 years ago. The shoes have changed. The clothes have changed. How much they get out, how mobile they are, what they do in their off times changed. So now you have to program that in, where coaches 20 years ago didn't have to program that in. That kid was running around barefooted. He was jumping. They were doing the craziest, dumbest stuff they could possibly think of because there wasn't nothing else to do. I mean, you know, chase each other with sticks. That's all you had. So those athletes were different. Now we have to program that in to get those athletes there.
Yeah, it's I think back to my childhood and what we did. It's just, I can't believe I made it. You know what I mean? Like, we did some really stupid stuff. But I think in the long run that helped you because you played every sport. You know, you went outside and you jumped and you did all those things like you're saying. And strength and conditioning 20 years ago was completely different than what it's going to be now. And it's 20 years from now, it's probably going to be completely different again. You know, and again, you got to change with the times. You got to adapt to it. You can complain or you can find a solution. And a lot of people complain. It's like you hear a lot of complaining. What are you doing to make it right? What is your solution to it? You know, I got to the point in my career, I'm just sick of hearing people talk and complain about it. find a solution. Stop coming to me with problems. Start finding solutions. And that's what I try to do here in Georgia, at least, in talking to our other coaches is, I don't care. Like, I don't want to hear your problems. Let's find solutions. Let's find ways to make it better. And I think everyone else is starting to buy into that a little bit more in our state. It's good, man. It's good. That's the type of dialect and the talks and conversations we need to have to make a change. It has to happen.
One of the other of the three things in that conversation I was alluding to was 531. We got started down that rabbit hole early. I've been able to talk to Jim Windler, just a jam up guy. Just amazing to talk to. But that program is so adaptable. You can combine it with the West Side for your speed stuff, for your VBT stuff. You can combine your plyometrics. You can put sprinting in there with it too. It's a great base program, and then you just put your little components in there, and everything for me gets way easier now that I understand what he's trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have the career I had without that book in his program. I don't. And I stole Monty Sparkman out in Texas. He started one night. Every time he speaks, I got to listen to him. And Mullins are two guys that I have to listen to. And he was talking about how he changed the 5-3-1 to 3-2-1 for his athletes in season. And I'm like, that's the greatest idea. So I stole that. And now we do 3-2-1 during in-season for in-season athletes. And, man, you're not doing a ton of weight. You're not doing a ton of reps. But, man, you are just seeing massive growth in our athletes. And that's been a game changer too, and it's all built off the 5-3-1. It's a pretty remarkable program, at least getting started and learning, and now adding my pieces to it and learning from other people. And it's pretty neat, man.
And Louis Simmons was kind of down that rabbit hole that you talked about with Monty Sparkman there, and then dropping it down. He said that max velocity work, your volume is so much lower that you can get away with lifting heavy because you're not just killing your athlete. You hit your max lifts if that's what you want to do. I don't know, a lot of schools don't max out, but if you had a 3-2-1 where you're not really maxing out, you're just finding a 95% and lifting it for AMRAP, I'm sure. But they can handle that weight because the volume is dropped.
Yeah, you're not gassing your athletes. They feel good. And a lot of that stuff, again, goes back to knowing your athletes, having that trust, having that relationship with them. How do you feel today? Getting into their mind and where their stress levels are and what's going on. Again, most of that's time during our movement prep or our mobility stuff. How you feeling? What's going on? Any boo-boos or ouchies today? What's your mind like? And a lot of them will be like, a little sore here or there, but good. Or I'm stressed, or my knee hurts. Okay, what can I do? Or they start coming up to you, coach. Hey, I need a stretch or a movement for this. Okay, and then you start doing it. They're like, oh, man, I feel a lot better. Now you're getting buy-in that way too, right? So it's a lot of it is just, are your athletes, do they feel better? Do they feel bigger, faster, stronger? Are they mentally there? Are they mentally confident in what they're doing? And that's, even if their lifts go down, which most of them don't because they're high schoolers and they're freak shows, especially, with athletes that we get to work with every single day, they're not going to get weaker. But mentally, if they're feeling good and they feel fast, then that's a win. They're gonna play lights out come Friday or come Saturday or come Tuesday on the court. And that's what we want. They're getting they're getting a heavy bench or a heavy squat or heavy deadlift or whatever it may be, but you're not taxing them, and they feel good. And that's, you're killing a couple birds there when you can keep that confidence level high and they feel good. Even if they're not hitting the numbers you want them to hit, who cares? They feel good. They're confident. They're playing well. That's a whole nother story and a whole nother different programming set. But if they feel well and they're playing well, let it be.
We've had that conversation many times out there. Is be there to stop them before they fail, because they're going to walk out of here way more confident hitting a lift than if they fail to lift. And especially if the lift's close to not what they had built up in their mind, where you're just turning out a defeated athlete, where stopping them and being like, hey, that's good enough, man. Yeah. Let's go home. And they leave way happier.
Yeah. That's I used to max out like every 4 or 6 weeks, depending on the program. And really, I've kind of went away from it altogether, which is a little different, I guess. Maybe it's not. I don't know. No idea what a lot of people do. But I always tell them, man, like it might be the 5s day, we're doing 5s on bench, and I stagger all that stuff so we're not all doing 5, bench, deadlift, front squat. Like we're going to do 5s, 3s, 1s, and they're just on rotational that way. Then we hit a deload, or there's always a spring break or a 3-day weekend, or whatever it may be to help that deload. But it's, hey, you're on 5s bench, but you're moving it at it looks like 60%. Like, how do you feel? I feel great. Okay, let's hit a 1+ then. Let's do it. Let's strike when the iron's hot. And again, you have to have the relationship with your athlete. Got to kind of talk to him about it. Like, I don't want little Johnny coming to me every day saying, hey, I want to hit my deadlift today. I want to hit my deadlift today. It's like, that's not how it works. Like, it feels good today. We all have those days. 135 sometimes feel like it's 315. And there's other days where 315 feels like an empty bar. Right. So in those days, when we have those days, we got to strike. We want to hit it. And our kids have really bought into that. I think that's, our guys and girls rally around that. It feels good. Hey, Susie's going to go for her PR on front squat. Let's get it. Let's get behind her, and people get pumped up. And it's kind of gives them that opportunity to hit it when they feel good. There's always those things where boyfriends, girlfriends, dogs die, something happens, stress in their life, and you're supposed to hit a 1+, and it's just not there. Well, those 8 weeks, those 16 weeks have been a waste then, in those kids' eyes. And you don't want that feeling, right? You want to keep them as high as possible and confident as possible. And we've been able to do that with that type of setup. So it's been good for us.
Now, some of that stuff in there we'll kind of come back around to, because there's a lot of good stuff there too. But to finish up the third point or idea I had on what you were talking about earlier, you were talking about VBT and some of those things that guys were doing 20 years ago, but nobody knew about it or whatever. What are they doing now? So in between podcasts, I get a little bit of a break every once in a while when I'm not researching the guest. And the one I've been listening to lately is Dave Tate has had Dave Hoff on 3 times, twice by himself, and then the newest one. And it's amazing to listen to that guy talk about where he is now from the days when they were figuring out the speed work and the speed percentages, and how they were too heavy in the beginning and how they've dropped down and how they figured all this stuff out. It's just incredible to listen to those guys talk, This newest one he had out was really good. I had just a bunch of notes on it today as I was actually getting ready for your podcast, but those guys are out there. You just got to find them and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah, it's I'm going to listen now. You gave me these guys. I have to get on and start listening to stuff. That's part of it, man. You got to meet people. I think social media is such a big thing now, and some coaches have really, again, adapted to it. Some have died away. Which is fine. Everyone has their own way of doing things. I love social media because I get to meet people like you. I get to meet guys like Dan Mullins. I get to meet coaches, from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Hawaii. It's like, and you get to talk to these people. And, every once in a while you go to a clinic or a NatCon and you run into them. It's like, holy cow, you're a real person. And but that's how you do it, though. You know what I mean? Like, I've learned so much from people on social media. Just having private conversations and doing things like this has really helped my career, helped me as a coach, just by reaching out. And again, there's so many good people out there. I think we always get caught up in all the bad stuff. When we look at all the arguing and all the stupid things that happen on social media, there are a lot of good people. There's a lot more good people in this world than we give credit. And a big part of that is just getting to know them and just reaching out. Shoot, man, I wanted to be a GA in the weight room when I was graduating. I didn't want to go into football. I wanted to go into strength and conditioning. when I was a student assistant working my way through. And I think I personally emailed and mailed like 100 different schools. And I got one call back. One. And this was like before Twitter, and this is like when Facebook was still around. People still did that. People still do Facebook, right? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
03 was the last time I had Facebook, so that's been a long time.
I held out on it. I never got one. Now I like Instagram, and it took me forever to hop on there. But yeah, I'm not a Facebook guy.
No. So I mean, I had to reach out to a lot of different people, man, and only one responded. But from that one response, I got to learn. He sent me some information. I didn't end up going and getting a job, but at least I got a contact, and I was able to reach out to different people, and they kind of sparked my, now you start networking, and I know this person put me onto this person, and there's a lot of good things out there, a lot of good people out there. You just sometimes you gotta get shot down 99 times, right? Sometimes that happens, and that's life, and it ain't always sunshine and rainbows, man. And we got some bad things and some no's, and that's good. It's all right. That happens.
When the right time and the right spot's open, you'll find yourself there more times than not.
Yeah, man. No doubt. Everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer in that. And that's why I'm here in Georgia.
So we'll move into kind of what you were talking about here a minute ago. This should tie into it pretty good. But you have some high-level male and female athletes. You have Division I prospects. You have guys and girls that are committed to play Division I on top of your Division II, NAIA, JUCO. I mean, if you got Division I, you got them all the way down the list.
Yeah.
Now, those kids are putting a lot on your shoulders. And I think everybody wants D1 kids. Everybody wants all these kids. But I don't know that everybody understands the responsibility that goes along with having those kids in the room. They've given you all of their hopes, all of their dreams, whatever you say is the gospel, and they're going to run hard with it and do what it takes to achieve their dreams. What is that responsibility like, and how do you keep it all in balance with where you are today and also trying to help with their future?
One, it's awesome. It's awesome because I have some athletes that are just like, I could never ever do that. Like it's awesome. I'm in awe a lot of my time, right? I'm watching some of these kids run, some of our female athletes run and jump, and then I go watch them play, and it's like I couldn't do any of it, right? To me, I'm in awe a lot of my time in the weight rooms, sprinting, jumping, watching all these athletes do their thing. It's just like it's really cool, man. Like I just don't have. I'm tall. I was 6'4", 220 coming out of high school. I was okay at playing quarterback. I didn't have a lot of offers or anything like that with D3. Then I transferred to NAIA school and had some success. But these athletes are just genetically just built to be amazing, and it's awesome. At the same time, there's always been those couple of kids that have it but don't work for it, right? And that's hard. That's probably the hardest part that I've ever had to deal with in my life when it comes to our athletes, is that when the kids have everything to be great and don't work for it, that's heartbreaking, right? Because saddest thing in life is wasted talent, right? Saddest thing in life is wasted talent. And when you have kids like that you just know that could be something phenomenal and just don't do it, that's heartbreaking. I've been blessed at Roswell to have some amazing athletes that have entrusted me and have bought in, and they've raised the level around them, and they can go either way, because little Johnny's a great football player, a great lacrosse player, but he doesn't work very hard in the weight room. He doesn't do everything he's supposed to do, but he's still great, still has a lot of success and people. And then you get those types of kids that are, Johnny doesn't have to lift, but he's a starter and he's great. He's going D1, so I'm gonna go his route. Well, you don't have the genetics that Johnny does, right? But it's also on the other flip side of things, when you have kids that work extremely hard, that get to that level, that have everything genetically and start working that route, they raise the level of everybody around them, right? So now little Johnny that wasn't, or little Frankie, whatever you want to name, the kid's not very talented, but he works really, really hard. Now you've raised that kid's level a little bit, right? Now you made him a little bit faster, you made him a little bit stronger, maybe he's a little bit thicker, he's more resilient and more gritty, from the work he's put in here and on the field. Now he's he went from a C- player to a maybe a C+ player. Maybe that's his top end. Maybe that's his where he's going to level out at. And it's those guys that will change the game, right? They'll make your team better because you're not always going to have those Power 5 kids. They're very rare when you do have them. And then, I hold my breath anytime we do much of anything because I know what's in front of these young people's lives, and you want to make sure that they're okay at all times, because if they go down, something happens, it doesn't matter if it's the B team backup on JV basketball. If he rolls an ankle, like I take that personal, like, what did I do wrong? What could I have been doing better to help that kid? And then I don't want to know what it's like when a top tier player gets hurt, because I don't want that to happen, and it's everything you program. Most of those athletes, they're not treated differently. Try not to treat them differently. They're probably held to a higher standard. They probably get yelled at by me more than often than not. And hopefully our other coaches are doing the same. Just because you have stars next to your name or you committed to go to, Alabama or Georgia, wherever it may be, doesn't mean you can get away with it. The standard's the standard, and the environment's the environment. And those kids that I've had, at least the last couple of years here at Roswell, have kept that standard and that culture where it needs to be, and it can swing a room. It can swing a room positively or negatively. And that's every day. If I let one kid do it and I don't let another, well, it's not good. That breeds turmoil. Again, you have to be able to communicate with your kids and know what the heck's going on. So yeah, this kid might be back squatting while this kid's doing front squat. There's a reason why. Don't worry about why he is doing it. He's doing it because I told him to. And that's a hard conversation to have with a lot of kids. Then you see freshmen like, well, I want to back squat. It's like, no, you're not back squatting. You are front squatting or you're goblet squatting. You'll get to that point. It's just, you ain't there yet, right? And again, just communicate with your kids. It is a lot because you want those kids to do extremely well. I tell our athletes, I'm getting prepared for the next level. And when you walk into your college weight room, are you physically, mentally, spiritually ready to do it? Right? I think the best compliment I can get is from a kid that texts me or calls me and says, hey man, I'm out of the freshman program already. I'm working with the big dogs. I had a female athlete that went to Tennessee to play soccer, and she's like, hey, I'm the best cleaner in the room. Coaches count me on how well I clean and how much weight I'm doing. It's like, well, one, genetically, you can do it because that's who you are. And two, you bought in and you just did the work I asked you to do. That's on you. Anyone can program. You can have the best strength coach in the world. If you don't put the work in, it doesn't matter. And that's been driven to our kids, and they've been very, very blessed and lucky to have great kids here that are extremely talented, very blessed, and have bought into what we are doing. And that's the exciting part, because now you can see their progress. You can see the weight they're putting on. You can see the speed they're adding. You can see the jumping metrics. You can see all that stuff happening. You can see their mobility improving. You can see their confidence level go up, and they're ready. I'm very proud of that. They're ready to go. And when they go to the next level, they know it. They know it. It should be smooth transition right into the big dogs and lifting and moving with them. And that's a good feeling. That's what you want, right? That's better than any award or reward or praise I can get when my girl goes to Tennessee and she's with the big dogs already and she's lifting with them. That's a badge of honor for me, and I hold that dear.
you may agree or you may disagree. I don't know, but it seems like the more we throw elite around a lot, elite, travel ball, whatever. The more I'm around it, I think elite is a mindset. You talked about that just there a little bit, and that's what made me think of it. When an elite kid walks in a room, the room meets him. He never or she never meets the room. And if you're not willing to meet that elite kid, they don't care. They'll tell you what they have to tell you to get you there, or you can leave the room. It doesn't matter. They're never brought down by their surroundings. And I don't know how you feel about it. That just seems to be what I've learned through a few years of being around some really good kids.
Yeah, they have that mindset. They have that drive. They have that in their mind that they are going to do it. There's nothing that's going to stop them. And that's rare. That's rare because you have some really talented athletes that come into the room that are not to that standard, and you see it and you know it. They'll go to XYZ University and they're out in a semester, because again, it is a business. It is a business at the next level. And some of them understand that. Some of them don't. That's a rude awakening for a lot of young people going at the next level, is that the second that you sign on that dotted line, they've already started recruiting the next to replace you. And it happens quick. That's a 6-month contract at best. Right? So you better produce, you better show up, you better put out, because otherwise there's already someone coming in. Right? And especially now with the transfer portal, it's been a rude awakening for a lot of young people. Good and bad. But the elite mindset's rare. It's rare.
And kids don't understand, that they're going to live out their dream, wherever school they're going to play at for their next part of their career, but they don't know what cutthroat business is. Them schools do know what cutthroat business is. So yeah, they're going to sign you here today, but like you said, there's somebody somewhere. If they have to move a kid from another position to play your spot because you're not cutting it, that's what they're going to do. You become expendable at that point.
Absolutely.
And that's a tough situation. So that'll lead to my next question. Kids don't know how to be adults, but adults somewhat know how to be kids because they were kids. Understanding this, how do you meet them where they're at and work with them as kids?
Wow. Yeah, that's I think you got to give it bits and pieces, because they're not going to listen. You lecture, they don't care. They don't care. We didn't care. When we were 16, 15, we did not care. You know exactly what you were thinking about when you were 15, 16 years old. It had nothing to do with anything to do with your sport. But you got to give it bits and pieces, right? You got to give it to them one line at a time, one picture at a time, one slide at a time. It's got to be a quote and then 5 minutes of talking about it, max. I wouldn't even go that far. But there's a couple of good books out there that you read, mini stories or something like that are page long, and have them reflect and then move on. And it's got to be quick. Again, they don't want to think. They don't really care, right? But if you got to stay consistent, you got to give it bits and pieces. And, the kids that are interested in it will listen. The kids that aren't. It doesn't mean you give up on them. You just got to keep doing it. It's just bits and pieces. I used to do a quote of the day every week, like the quote of the week or whatever it may be, and then the challenge of the week. And it might be like, you have to go talk to someone that you never talked to before. You got to do something that makes you uncomfortable today. Go try a new skill, something. And you get a couple kids like, hey, I've never done a cartwheel. I tried today. It's like little things like that. You know what I mean? Like, those things help. I've done that in the past just to kind of get kids out of their comfort zone. They don't want to speak in front of people, which I don't either. I'm not a very good public speaker, but you got to do it sometimes. And giving kids the option, and it's got to be quick. Like I said, it's like something short and easy they can do. Hey, text your mom or dad today and tell me you love them. Have you done that yet today? No. Okay, well, try it this week. Try to send a text to someone to tell them that you care about them. And that's part of being an adult, man. That's part of being careful, like caring for others and empathetic and loving to others. And it's just those small things, man, that I think they add up over time, especially when you're with athletes as much as we are over a course of 4 years. That can make a big difference, right? And if you learn one thing this year, and you learn one thing next year, and you learn one thing as your junior year, and you learn one as a senior year, like that's 4 things that you probably want to learn if you didn't do it with me, right? And you got to take the small victories, man. You got to take them. Kids say please and thank you. That's a win. Kids come in and give you a high five. That's a win. They're starting to figure it out. See you, coach. Have a good day. That's a win, right? And you're starting to teach them how to be young men and young women, and it's not instant. It takes a long time. Our sophomores are going to probably be juniors in college before they figure it out. And our freshmen, God love them. It takes them a while, man. And if you can get one thing in through that little brain of theirs, then that's a win. And that's what we try to do as much as we possibly can.
Moving on to another question. We had a mutual friend that asked us both to elaborate on the same question. So if I don't ask it, he'll know, and then he'll be upset. I don't want that to happen. But watching film, your average athletes just look so much better than everybody else's average athletes. What can some of that be attributed to? I mean, it could be luck of the draw. Maybe you just live in the school district that has the greatest athletes of all time. Maybe it's your coaching staff. Maybe they're just the greatest coaches of all time. But there has to be more to that. I mean, you're just not going to be that lucky every year in and out. So what are some things that you're doing or seeing that's making those kids pop on film?
I would say a secret is genetics. We have good bloodlines here. It's being truthful.
I'll let that slide a little bit, but you know what I mean? I don't know that I'm going to totally buy into genetics when.
Let me elaborate. Okay, let me go from there.
Okay.
I think part of it is that we have good bloodlines here. Where we're at in this area, it's been very good for a lot of years, right? There's been a lot of good talent that come through. I think the second thing is that we work with them young, right? All summer long, I worked with 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, right? They buy into it fairly quickly. Our football coaching staff especially, we hope to advance that and build this culture, this community up even more, where I'm getting girls soccer, boys soccer. I'm getting all these athletes and start building that up as much as we possibly can, make it as great as we possibly can. But our football kids have been coming in since 5th grade. The coaches before me and the coach before them, they've been working with them dudes, right? And they get a foundation going in 5th grade, right? So those 5th graders know how to goblet squat. They know how to bench. They know how to deadlift now. They know how to trap bar deadlift. They know how to jump. They know how to run. We time them, right? We make it competitive. And then they go home and they're like, hey, Dad, or Mom, I want to go to the gym. And you see, like, our young kids, man, they love it. They love it. And we're giving them the basics and the education behind it. This is before me too. It's not just me. A lot of the past has been this tradition here. It's been great. And I just kind of been able to tweak it and grow from that strong foundation and teach our kids some other things. And I think that buy-in from the younger groups, I think, again, genetics plays a part in that, because we have some really good athletes that live in this area and their parents are very good athletes. And that's some of that, that plays a big part in it, man. Like, yeah, good bloodlines in this area. That's a good thing. Now, hopefully those people get older, have kids, and their bloodline comes through, right? But it's been starting early, teaching them the right way, teaching them this is the way it's done. This is the standard. This is where it has to be kept. And you want to be good for the next 20 years. And the standard's the standard. And we ain't gonna waive, we're not gonna waver on it. That's it, dude. Like, sorry, that's it. And then our kids have matched it, and they've done a great job, man. I got some 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders that are going to be extremely special. But they start early. We got an eighth grader that's 6'7". He's a monster. He couldn't touch his toes. But he comes in, he's consistent in what he does. He's done a great job. He's one of the best movers we have now. And when you can pair that up and you start teaching them how to do those things, then your average is no longer average, right? Because you already got that foundation built. So when they're hitting their freshman year, they know how to RDL, they know how to hinge and jump and squat and clean. And, now you guys were starting at block 0, whereas my guys are on their 4th, 5th year of training age. That makes a big difference, right? So, yeah, our freshmen they are freshmen, but maybe they don't look like freshmen. Maybe the strength levels are a little bit higher. And when I'm stronger than most of the people around me, you're going to be able to, your confidence is higher. What are the other teams doing? They're nervous. They're scared. They don't want to get hurt. Less kids play, whereas more kids are playing. Our kids are happier. We're winning. That breeds confidence, and that brings in more people. That brings in the athletes that maybe didn't play before, only played soccer, only played baseball. Now they're playing football. So yeah, that plays a big part of it too. But we get them early, and our families in this area have been very, very good. And our community's been strong, and they bring them in, and they're consistently there throughout the summer, getting better. And I don't know if I've ever been a part of a program that does that. And I think that's a big part of it. Not to give all our secrets away, but that plays a big part, man. When you got buy-in from 5th graders, and I have parents email me, "Hey, when can Johnny, the 3rd grader, come lift?" Or most of the country are saying, "You guys can't lift until you hit puberty," or "I don't want Johnny doing any of this." Well, our kids are, and they're healthy, and they're strong, and they're fast. And you tie that into good genetics, and you got something special. And again, I'm very, very blessed because the tradition here and the community here is very, very strong.
Well, let's look at that a little differently. So you're talking about 5th graders. You're talking about parents emailing about 3rd graders. These kids are stepping into giving up their childhood. I don't want that to sound wrong, but you understand where I'm coming at. They're giving up their summers, a lot of their summers, to be in there, to be better athletes. How do you reward them with that to make it worth it? That when they're 18, 19 years old, they've left school, they're going on with their life, they don't look back and say, "Man, I could have just been a kid and not done any of this and had more fun." How do you ensure that the trade-off is worth it to the athlete?
You got to dangle that carrot. I mean, what do you want to do? Parents are having kids play travel baseball. Hell, my son's 5 years old, and I got Lamb-boogled or whatever you want to say, and they're playing him in the all-star team for 5U. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Okay, so he practices 3 days a week during the summer. They have tournaments all day Saturday, all day Sunday, whereas we were barely getting to church or not going to church on Sunday, which is, just we never did that growing up, right? But you can spend all this money to go do all that stuff. To me, that's taking away their childhood. 2 days a week in the weight room during the summertime, later in the day where it's a little bit cooler, they've already had the chance to go play and hang out with their buddies, and then you got to dangle that thing, man. Like, you want to be good, or do you want to be great? And that's a tough conversation at 5th grade. But a lot of those parents and kids are spending a lot of money to go play travel lacrosse and travel baseball. What they don't understand is most of those scholarships aren't scholarships. Again, it comes back to educating our people. It's like, hey, if I'm a bigger, faster, stronger 5th grader than everybody else, I get put on better teams, better coaches, more, ways of being noticed from other people, right? Whereas I'm not bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else, not on a very good team. I don't have great coaches. I don't get great publicity, not getting recruited like everyone else, right? So I think that's kind of the conversation you have with our kids. Like, this is the standard. You see the names on the board. You see the Hall of Famers. You see the guys at the next level. You see the girls at the next level. You see our Hall of Famers in our hallway. you see all these people coming back. Do you want to be that person? Are you going to be the girl that's going to play Division I lacrosse at Duke or Clemson? Don't you want to be that person? Two days a week and an hour apiece. That's a start, right? We're just dipping the toe in the water, man. And I think that conversation, and I think they start seeing changes and they start seeing confidence grow. And that's when you start getting them, right? You might get a kid one day a week, and then the next time he's like, you know what, that was fun. I'm going to come again Thursday. They come Thursday, okay, you're playing games, you're doing this. It's not just all grind and work and work. We try to have fun, but hard work, man, that's what it's going to take. And I think you're starting to develop young people to understand that life is work, right? It's not always going to be easy. And we're starting to give them just bits and pieces again, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And our kids have done a good job with it. Our parents have bought into it. I think most parents are so wrapped up in their kids going to the next level and great things happening for them that they're going to make them do it anyway. And I'd rather be with me and enjoying it and teaching them the right things than being forced to doing something they don't want to do. So we try to make it as fun as we possibly can, but also you dangle that carrot. They see our guys that are going to Notre Dame, see our guys that are going to Virginia, see our guys who are going to Marshall and HBCU school. You see these guys day in and day out. You see these girls are going to play Division I soccer, Division I lacrosse, Division I basketball, and they have role models. I want to be like them. Okay, well, this is what they did, right? So this is the start, and it's you can't always sell that life of being a Division I player. They're a Division I person. Like, they're just great people, right? And they're always there. They're there to give help and give back to our community. And you start getting that sense of community and that love, and they serve others, and they want to be like them. And yeah, man, it's not easy. I tell them every single time we get done, you guys could have been at home playing Fortnite, could have been at home playing video games or swimming at your pool or going to a friend's house, hang out, playing games. But you chose to be here. You are making a difference. And, they get excited about that stuff, man. They do.
Now, you've learned all this, and just listening to you talk, you have a passion for the kids, a passion for, making an athlete better. But I'm sure you've had to work with a lot of younger coaches. So mentoring a younger coach to help them see the full picture, of what your real purpose is. How are you able to do that?
I think through our group that we kind of got together here in Georgia, reaching out and going to different clinics and meet different people. I don't know if I would say I'm a mentor, but I am an older guy. But I think a lot of it is just, I always tell them the same thing. I tell them, be a good dude, be a good person, be a good woman, and work hard. And everything seems to fall in place. If you're willing to do the work, you're willing to study, you're willing to meet people, you're willing to go out and serve others, and do those types of things, and be a good person when someone needs it, it all works out in the end. And that's been my message I've been sending to our young people in our state, especially in our group, NHSSCA group here in Georgia, is be a good person, work hard. Everything else falls into place if you can just do those two things. And, a couple of them have listened and done a really, really good job with it. I think it really boils down to that. You don't need anything special. There's no secret sauce. There's nothing. There's no Mike Secret stuff. It's be a good person, work hard. And it's worked out okay for me. At least that's something I try to hang my hat on. It's just being a good dude, doing what I can to help other people. And it's paid off, man. I got a roof over my head. My family's happy. We have everything I could ever imagine when I was growing up as a kid. I'm proud of it. And it's really just because of those two things. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not the biggest, fastest, strongest. But Not everyone's going to say it, but I feel like I'm a good dude and I care and I'll serve and do what I got to do to make it. So that's it, man. Be a good dude. Work hard.
Now, I know this is your busy time of year. You're trying to get some athletes ready for the fall sports that are getting ready to start. It's hot down there in Georgia, so I'll kind of wrap up with this and let you enjoy the rest of your evening. We talked about it earlier today, kind of texting back and forth. This is totally off topic, but who is your all-time favorite wrestler?
All-time favorite wrestler.
Don't ask me how we got to texting about this today, but we ended up on the subject anyhow, so we'll wrap up, head this direction.
So many good ones, but I just think John Cena has just been awesome. I would have to say he's been my favorite. I just think his entrance songs, the pop he gets when he comes out, even now 20-something years later, man, I don't know. It'd be one person I would like to meet. Seems like a good dude. Hopefully it's not fake. He seems like a really good dude. Seems like a funny guy. I'd say John Cena. Close second. Bret the Hitman Hart was probably my favorite growing up when I was young. As I really liked him, even though he's Canadian. My wife's Canadian. I always give her a hard time. But Bret the Hitman Hart's pretty awesome too. And he'd be a very close second. But how about you? What's your favorite?
Man, my favorite. You kind of got me there because I'm kind of like you. There were just so many great ones throughout the time. And his career was short, but I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin, when that glass broke and he come down the alleyway, you knew some stuff was getting ready to go down. I always enjoyed him. Later on in his career, I'd say my favorite was Chris Jericho.
Yeah. He's pretty good too.
And the one from when I was a kid that I think every kid hated, but as I watched the documentary on him and got to know more about his life, and then you see the ins and outs of wrestling and how they fixed it all and what they did, was Roddy Piper. That man was a genius with words, but when you're a kid and you think it's real, you don't understand what he's doing. But when you look back at the acting and everything he did and put into that character to make you hate him so bad, they said he had to stitch like Kevlar in his jacket because fans would try to stab him. He was
I gotta watch that one. That sounds awesome.
Oh, it was a great documentary, and I think A&E was doing some wrestling documentaries, and his was one of them. When they talked about that he was great with words. He could really screw people up in an interview because you never knew what he was going to say. Talking about when they called him, back in the 80s, they're like, hey, we're going to bring Cyndi Lauper down to ringside, because she had the video at the time. I think Girls Want to Have Fun, and Lou Albino was in the video with her, so the wrestling connection. And they're like, do you think you could kick Cyndi in the head without hurting her? And he's like, yeah, I kick people for a living. No problem. It's just stuff like that he set up and was able to execute that looking back on it now, I just think about how genius that was.
Yeah, that's, I can't wait to go watch that now. I'm probably going to watch that tonight before we go to bed. Like I said, my boys are 10 and 5. They are so wrapped up into wrestling now. So that's cool, man. It takes me back to when I was a kid and watching with my dad, and my dad taking me, and I got to take my boys, last year to see Raw or SmackDown. This year we went to Raw, and just to see their eyes light up when they see their favorite people come out, and it's neat, man. Like I like it. I enjoy it again. It's brought me back to my childhood. So there's a couple hours a week that we sit down, we watch Raw and SmackDown and NXT and all the pay-per-views and stuff. When they come on, it's a big old deal. We get pizza and snacks and stuff. My boys are all into it, and I cherish those moments because I know it's not always gonna be that way. I'm not gonna want to hang out with that. It ain't gonna be cool no more. And I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
All right. I typically like to ask people a question too, so I'm gonna put you on a hot seat.
All right, go with it.
Last question, and then you can do whatever you got to do with me to get me out of here. So the best leaders, I want you to think about the best leaders. Now, this is the conversation my brother and I had right before he went to Iraq for his first tour, right? So we argued for about 4 or 5 hours straight. And here's the thing, we agreed, and we still talked about it. This is one of my favorite things to talk about at dinner table, at Thanksgiving or Christmas, when you get together with friends. Right? So the best leaders we've ever had. Just think of any of the best, the greatest of all time. Like when you think about leaders in our world, the best ones you've ever had. Like for me, like Lincoln comes to mind. Like I love everything about Lincoln. I've read all his books. I think Lincoln is a great leader and great story behind him. But you have 3 seconds, not even top of your head. I want an answer.
I've got 3
seconds. You don't get to think about anything. Okay, here's the question. The greatest leaders of all time that you can ever imagine, the greatest, are they born or are they made that way? So,
wow. Okay. So greatest leaders of all time. I don't know, man. Somebody like Patton or something like that would fall in there in my mind.
Born or made. Are they born that way or made that way?
I think he was born with the ability to lead, and through the situation.
Oh, you can't do that. They're born or made. You can't do both.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was one or the other. God made him to win a war. He was born that way.
Okay.
There you go. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I never tell people my answer.
What? Well, I wish I would have known that before I answered.
I think that's something I've never told anybody that answer.
Okay.
So I'll argue it both ways. So usually when I get in a room and I ask those questions, or that's something I've always asked in my interviews too, because I want to know how people think a little bit, right? People just think that we're supposed to do what we do, or people made what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
I like that conversation.
So I know we're going longer than I said we were going to go a minute ago, but now you have me down a rabbit hole. We had a huge discussion at work. Jocko, did God made him? Did God make him that way? Or did the situation make him that way? Where he's just stone cold. I mean, the world can only afford to have so many people like him, I think. Otherwise, there would not be a such thing as civilization. I mean, his job in Fallujah was essentially to just go and make everybody around him mad and stir the stuff up. Did the situation of war make him that way, or was he just born built different?
I think that's a great conversation piece, man. I think you can argue for both. I honestly, I always like to hear people say their answer, and then I try to give them something that's like, okay, maybe they, yeah. I think Lincoln was made into who he is, or who he was, because of all the things he went through, right? And I think he was made into the leader that he was because of what he had to go through his entire life. But it's always fun. Again, that's not my answer, but I always like to give someone the opposite, just so you guys get the wheels turning a little bit. And I think that's a great conversation piece for people. It steers away from, conversations maybe you don't want to have, or I don't know. I think it's fun, man. I love seeing people answer that. I think you're the first person in a very, very long time to answer it born. So props to that, man. I think you're one of the first people in a very long time to do that.
I've been around a lot of people, and I will say environment may play a role, but there you go. You start getting into something like evolution. Does evolution exist, or are we just looking at what the environment created from what was already there? You could argue it both ways. I mean, you're starting to get in a wheelhouse that I like. I enjoy conversations like this, and I enjoy like what you said. I'll set up an argument like, what do you want to debate? And pick your side.
Yeah.
And then we'll argue it from that point. So, I think everybody's built with different characteristics and different traits, and some people are just born with that mindset. You're talking about how rare elite athletes are that bring the room up to them. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
I think leaders are the same way. I don't think you can just pick somebody out and say, hey, you're going to be our leader. I just don't think it works like that.
And that was so the last thing I did, I was out in Kansas City, speaking out there for RAC coach, and I asked that question to the whole room. The entire room said made. And my argument to them was, and again, not giving you an answer, I said, there's some people in our lives that walk through a door and they're there. And there's a light about them. There's just something about them that just changes the room, right? And you're going to tell me that person was made that way or they were born that way. And I said, you guys tell me they're made that way. But every one of you walked into this room. Did everyone get that feeling? So I think it is a rare thing. Like you said, it's the elite mindset. It's having that control or that presence about someone. And that was my argument to them, right? So you can play both sides of things. And that's, again, I think it's interesting to hear people's answers because I think you can find out a lot about them from that answer. So you did good, man. That was awesome.
I don't know.
That's awesome. I love it. So now you can take that. You can ask all your other people that you interview or, ask your family or friends. And, I think it's always interesting to hear people's answers to that because it is one of the you won't stop thinking about. You're going to think about it tonight. You're probably going to ask someone tomorrow. It's going to be, it's always a good conversation. I think both people can see it both ways. I haven't met anybody who said made this way and they just argue the entire time. They're like, well, or vice versa. So it's one of those things. It's a good conversation piece. There you go. I brought something to the table. Hopefully and maybe that's all they learned today, but that would be a good one.
No, that's a very good one. And man, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish I would have had a couple more seconds, but picking one off the top of your head, that gives you something to work with. I mean, you got to be quick and I think the way you handled it was pretty cool. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming on. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, man, let me know.
Right on, brother. Same.